I am Marissa, 17 years old, and a straight-A student from a small town in Pennsylvania. My parents always presented us as the perfect family, but behind closed doors, my father ruled with an iron fist, and my mother stood by in silence. I never imagined standing up for my little brother would end with my jaw broken and wired shut. That moment of excruciating pain changed everything. They thought silencing me would keep me in line, but it only ignited a fire they never saw coming. Before I share how I escaped and found justice, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and subscribe if you have ever stood up against abuse. Growing up in our middle-class household in Millfield, Pennsylvania, meant living by strict rules that were never to be questioned. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. Our two-story colonial house with its neatly trimmed lawn and white picket fence hid the reality of what happened inside those walls. My father, Thomas, 42, worked as a construction foreman. He stood 6'3" with broad shoulders and hands, calloused from years of physical labor. He demanded respect from everyone around him, especially his family. His explosive temper could be triggered by something as simple as dinner being 5 minutes late or a homework assignment scoring less than an A. His voice would boom through the house, making the walls seem to vibrate with his anger. "In my house you live by my rules," he would say almost daily. "I work my fingers to the bone to provide for this family, and all I ask for is respect and obedience." My mother, Eleanor, 40, was the complete opposite. Where my father was loud and imposing, my mother was quiet and submissive. She worked as a part-time receptionist, but dedicated most of her life to keeping the house immaculate and ensuring my father never had reason to complain. Her once bright smile had faded over the years, replaced by a permanent look of caution, always scanning the room to make sure everything was in order before my father came home. Then there was my little brother Ryan, just 12 years old. With his messy brown hair and gap-toothed smile, he still maintained the innocence I had lost years ago. He was smart and creative, but learned early to keep his voice down and his opinions to himself. I felt fiercely protective of him, wanting to preserve his spirit before my father crushed it like he had almost crushed mine. Our household operated under a strict set of unwritten rules. Grades had to be perfect. When father called you, responded immediately. Questions were seen as challenges to authority and were not tolerated. Dinner was at 6 sharp with everyone seated and waiting before father took his place at the head of the table. The television volume was kept low, and laughter never rose above a certain level. Despite the suffocating pressure, I managed to excel academically. School became my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe and be recognized for my abilities rather than criticized for my shortcomings. I threw myself into my studies, joining every academic club possible, partly because I loved learning, but mostly because it kept me out of the house. My plan was clear: earn a full scholarship to a college far away and never look back. The verbal abuse started small when I was young, almost imperceptible. "Are you really wearing that, or could you try using your brain for once?" But as I grew older and started forming my own opinions, the comments became more cutting, more frequent. "You think you are so smart, but you would not survive a day in the real world," my father would say when I brought home my straight-A report card. "She gets these ideas from those books," my mother would add, never directly challenging him, but always finding ways to explain away my supposed defiance. I loved my family despite everything. There were rare moments of normalcy that I clung to my father teaching Ryan how to throw a baseball, my mother braiding my hair for a school dance, family movie nights where tension temporarily dissolved in the blue light of the television, of screen. These glimpses of what could have been made the reality of what was even more painful. To cope, I developed strategies. I kept a journal hidden under a loose floorboard beneath my bed, pouring my true thoughts onto its pages. I stayed at school until the last possible moment, volunteering for every after-school activity that would keep me out of the house. I found an ally in my English teacher, Miss Jenkins, who seemed to sense something was wrong. She never pried directly but offered me books about resilient young women and stayed late to help me with college application essays. My best friend Allison was the only person who ever directly asked if things were okay at home. We had been friends since elementary school, and she had witnessed my father's temper firsthand during a sleepover in 6th grade when he had screamed at me for leaving a glass on the coffee table. "Your dad seems really intense," she had said afterward. "Is he always like that?" "He just cares about keeping the house nice," I had. replied the lie, bitter on my tongue. It is not a big deal. But Allison was not convinced. As we entered high school, she noticed how I flinched at loud noises, how I obsessively checked my phone when my father texted, how I made excuses not to invite her over. Still, I maintained the facade, protecting the family secret as I had been conditioned to do. Everything is fine became my mantra, repeated so often I almost believed it myself. We are just a traditional family. My dad is old school, that is all. But everything was not fine, and deep down I knew it. As my senior year approached, bringing with it the promise of escape through college, I felt a growing dread. Not for myself, but for Ryan. Who would protect him when I was gone? The thought kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sound that might indicate my father had turned his attention to my little brother. Junior year brought new pressures as college applications loomed on the horizon. My father, who rarely took interest in my education beyond demanding perfect grades, suddenly became intensely focused on my future plans. "You will apply to Millfield Community College," he announced one evening at dinner, not as a suggestion, but as a fact. "You can live at home and help your mother with the house while you study. I will not waste money sending you to some liberal brainwashing institution hours away." My heart sank. Community college was fine for some, but I had been working toward a scholarship at a university with a strong psychology program. I wanted to understand why people like my father became the way they were and help others heal from similar experiences. "But Dad," I said, carefully measuring each word, "my guidance counselor thinks I could get a full scholarship to several universities. It would not cost you anything." His hand tightened around his fork. "Did I ask for your opinion, Marissa? This family stays together. End of discussion." That night I cried silently into my pillow, feeling my dreams crumbling. The next day at school I sought out Miss Jenkins. "My father wants me to stay local for college," I admitted the first time I had directly acknowledged his control. Miss Jenkins gave me a long look. "Marissa, you have extraordinary potential. I think we need to work on these applications anyway. What your father does not know will not hurt him." Over the next months, Miss Jenkins helped me apply to universities with strong financial aid programs. We used her classroom computer during lunch periods and after school. She let me use her address for correspondence, keeping the process hidden from my parents. My mother, ever observant despite her silence, noticed my extended absences and secretive behavior. One afternoon, I caught her looking through my backpack while I was in the shower. "Mom," I exclaimed, clutching my towel tighter. "What are you doing?" She jumped, guilt flashing across her face before settling back into its usual blank expression. "Just checking if you have laundry that needs washing," she said, though my backpack clearly contained only books. Later that night, she came to my room, something she rarely did. She sat on the edge of my bed, smoothing the comforter with trembling hands. "Marissa," she said quietly, "whatever you are planning, be careful. Your father, he means well, but he has certain expectations." For a moment, I thought she might be offering support, might finally acknowledge the wrongness of our situation. But she simply stood, straightened her shirt, and added, "Just do as he says. It is easier that way." That brief interaction told me everything. She knew she had always known, and she had chosen the path of least resistance. Meanwhile, Ryan was beginning to show signs of the toll our home life was taking. His teacher called about his declining participation in class. He had been caught in a shoving match with another boy, who had supposedly called him a wimp. At home, he became increasingly withdrawn, spending hours alone in his room with his Lego sets, creating elaborate structures only to destroy them in fits of frustration. One evening in late fall, the tension at dinner was particularly thick. My father had lost a bid on a major construction project to a newer company, and his mood was volatile. "This chicken is overcooked," he snapped at my mother. "Is it too much to ask for a decent meal after working all day?" "I am sorry, Thomas," my mother murmured, immediately standing to take his plate. "I will heat up some of the lasagna from yesterday." "Sit down," he barked. "I will eat it. Just do better tomorrow." Ryan and I exchanged glances, both of us pushing food around our plates, trying to be invisible. "And you," my father turned to me. "I heard from Bill Johnson that his daughter got early acceptance to Penn State. When were you going to tell me you were applying to colleges?" My stomach dropped. Bill's daughter Lucy was in my AP literature class and must have mentioned our similar application choices. "I was just exploring options," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nothing is decided yet." Nothing is decided because I already decided, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You are staying local. Period. That night as I passed Ryan's room, I heard muffled crying. I knocked softly and entered to find him curled up on his bed, shoulders shaking. Hey, buddy, I said, sitting beside him. Tough day. He nodded, wiping his eyes quickly. Dad yelled at me after dinner. Said I need to man up and stop being so sensitive. Said I am turning into a sissy. My heart broke for him. At 12, he should be thinking about video games and sports, not walking on eggshells in his own home. Listen to me, I said, pulling him into a hug. There is nothing wrong with having feelings. Dad is wrong about that. Okay. But what if he is right? Ryan whispered. What if I am just weak? You are one of the strongest people I know, I told him fiercely. It takes strength to stay kind in a tough situation. I taught him a breathing technique I had learned from a book on anxiety management. In through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 7, out through the mouth for 8. We practiced together until his breathing steadied. I promise I will always protect you, I said, no matter what. Little did I know how soon that promise would be tested or what it would cost me. 3 weeks later, I received my first college acceptance letter, Northeastern University in Boston, with a substantial scholarship. The letter arrived while my parents were at work, and I hid it in my secret journal spot under the floorboard. More letters followed. University of Pittsburgh, Temple University, each one offering various scholarships, each one representing a potential escape route. Miss Jenkins beamed with pride when I showed her, but her smile was tinged with concern. Have you thought about how you will tell your parents? She asked. I had not. Part of me hoped for a miracle that somehow my father would change his mind, see how important this was to me. Another part considered just leaving when the time came, disappearing to Boston or Philadelphia without a word. My indecision became moot one afternoon when I returned from school to find my father in my room, the floorboard pried up, my journal and acceptance letters spread across my bed. So this is how you respect me, he said, voice terrifyingly calm. Going behind my back, making plans to abandon your family. The next weeks were a nightmare. My father implemented new rules straight home after school, no phone, no computer, except for homework at the kitchen table where he could see the screen. He demanded to know where I was every minute of the day. And all the while, I watched Ryan shrink further into himself, knowing I had failed in my promise to protect him. Unless I found a way to break free, we would both remain trapped. Sunday dinners were sacrosanct in our household. My mother would spend hours preparing a roast or fried chicken with all the sides my father preferred. We would dress nicely and pretend to be the perfect family, maintaining the illusion even among ourselves. The first Sunday in April started like any other. My mother had prepared pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Ryan and I had set the table with the good dishes, the ones usually reserved for Thanksgiving and Christmas. My father sat at the head of the table, seemingly in a decent mood as he discussed an upcoming construction project. But the calm was deceptive. That morning he had learned he had lost another job bid to the same competitor, the second in 3 months. Though he had not exploded yet, I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his knuckles whitened around his fork, and I knew it was only a matter of time. We ate in silence, punctuated only by the clink of silverware against plates, and my father's occasional comments about neighborhood gossip or complaints about the city council. My mother nodded at appropriate intervals, while Ryan and I focused on our food, careful not to draw attention. Then it happened. Ryan reached for his water glass, but misjudged the distance. His elbow knocked against the gravy boat, sending brown liquid spreading across the white tablecloth toward my father. Time seemed to slow down. I watched the gravy inching toward my father's sleeve, knowing what would come next. My mother froze fork halfway to her mouth. Ryan's face drained of color. I am sorry, he gasped, already reaching for his napkin. I will clean it up. I am so sorry. My father stood slowly, gravy dripping from the table edge onto his pressed Sunday slacks. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. You worthless, clumsy idiot, he said, each word precise and cutting. Can you not even eat dinner without creating a disaster? What is wrong with you? Ryan shrank in his chair, his thin shoulders hunching forward as if to make himself smaller, less of a target. He was trembling, his eyes fixed on his plate. Answer me when I talk to you, my father continued, his voice rising. Are you stupid as well as clumsy? Did I raise a complete moron who cannot even hold a simple conversation? I watched my brother saw tears threatening to spill onto his cheeks, remembered my promise to protect him. In that moment, I thought about all the times I had stayed silent, all the times I had let fear rule me. A strange calm settled over me, and before I could think better of it, I spoke. He is just a kid, Dad. It was an accident. The words hung in the air, simple but revolutionary in our household. My father's attention shifted to me, his eyes narrowing. What did you just say to me? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. I should have backed down. Every instinct honed by years of walking on eggshells screamed at me to apologize, to retreat. But I looked at Ryan's face, saw hope mingled with terror there, and I could not take back my words. I said it was an accident. I repeated, my voice steadier than I felt. He did not mean to spill anything. There is no need to talk to him like that. Apologize, now. Each syllable was clipped precise. No. The word surprised even me. I am not going to apologize for telling the truth. My father moved with a speed that belied his size. One moment he was at the head of the table, the next he loomed over me, his face inches from mine. You ungrateful little brat. After everything I have done for you, the food on your table, the roof over your head, and this is the respect I get. I held his gaze, though my heart hammered against my ribs. Respect goes both ways, Dad. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother stand, her movements jerky, like a poorly manipulated puppet. For one wild moment, I thought she might intervene, might finally stand up for her children. Instead, she began clearing plates, her eyes fixed on the task, as if the scene playing out before her was not happening at all. Eleanor, my father snapped, leave the dishes and deal with your daughter. She paused, plates balanced precariously in her hands. Thomas, perhaps we should all just calm down. The gravy will wash out of your pants. This is not about the gravy, he roared. This is about respect. About raising children who are not ungrateful, disrespectful burdens. I am not being disrespectful, I said, rising from my chair to face him. I am just asking you to treat Ryan with basic kindness. He is 12 years old. What happened next occurred so quickly I had no time to react. My father's open palm connected with my cheek, the force of the blow knocking me back against the dining room wall. Pain exploded across my face, and for a moment my vision darkened at the edges. But it was the second blow that changed everything. As I staggered, trying to regain my balance, his fist connected with my jaw. I heard a sickening crack, felt something give way, and then agony, unlike anything I had ever experienced, radiated through my face. I collapsed to the floor, blood filling my mouth. Through the haze of pain, I heard Ryan screaming, saw him trying to reach me before my mother pulled him back. And then the most surprising sound, my mother's laughter. Not genuine mirth, but a high-strained sound that contained no humor at all. That is what you get for being useless, she said, her voice almost unrecognizable, for thinking you know better than your father. My father stood over me, breathing heavily, shaking out his hand. Maybe now you will learn to keep that gutter mouth shut. I could not respond if I wanted to. My jaw hung at an unnatural angle, and each attempt to move it sent fresh waves of pain through my entire head. But as I looked up at my parents from the floor, something crystallized within me. A resolve, cold and hard as steel. They thought they had won, thought they had finally broken me into submission, but in that moment of excruciating pain, I made a decision that would change all our lives. I would not just escape this house. I would make sure Ryan got out too, and they would face consequences for what they had done. As blood dripped onto my mother's pristine dining room carpet, I felt something like a smile trying to form through the pain. They had no idea what was coming. The emergency room at Millfield General Hospital buzzed with the usual Sunday night activity. A child with a high fever, an elderly man clutching his chest, a college student with a deep cut from a cooking mishap, and me holding a blood-soaked dish towel to my face, my father's arm around my shoulders, in what would appear to anyone else as a gesture of comfort. She fell down the basement stairs, he explained to the triage nurse, his voice full of concern. I have told her 100 times to turn on the light before going down there. I could not contradict him, even if I wanted to. The pain was too intense, my jaw too damaged to form words. All I could do was stare at the nurse, willing her to see through his lies to notice the inconsistency between a fall and the precise damage to my face. She did look at me a beat too long, her eyebrows drawing together slightly. "Can you tell me what happened, honey?" Before I could attempt any response, my father answered for me. "She is in too much pain to talk. That is why we brought her in right away." The nurse made a note on her clipboard, and I was taken for x-rays. The technician winced when he saw the images. "That is a clean break of the mandible," I overheard him telling the doctor in the hallway. "Not typical for a stair fall. Usually see more damage to other areas with falls." Hope flared briefly but died just as quickly when the doctor entered the examination room. "So you took a tumble down the stairs?" Dr. Matthews asked, looking at me rather than my father. I nodded slightly, the movement sending fresh pain through my jaw. What else could I do? I was 17, still a minor, still under my parents' control. If I told the truth now, before I had a plan, before I had evidence, before I could ensure Ryan's safety, what would happen to us? "The break is severe," Dr. Matthews continued. "We will need to wire your jaw shut while it heals. That means liquid diet only, no talking, careful oral hygiene. 6 to 8 weeks minimum." My father placed his hand on my shoulder, squeezing slightly. To the doctor, it would seem supportive. I felt the warning in his grip. "Whatever she needs, doctor. We will take good care of our little girl." 2 hours later, I left the hospital with my jaw wired shut, a prescription for liquid painkillers, and care instructions I could not read through my tear-blurred vision. The car ride home was silent, but as we pulled into our driveway, my father turned to me. "This was your own fault, Marissa. You should know your place by now. But perhaps this is the lesson you needed." At home, Ryan was waiting up, despite the late hour, his face streaked with dried tears. When he saw me, he let out a small sound of distress. "Marissa, I am so sorry. This is all my fault." I shook my head, frantically ignoring the pain, and pulled him into a careful hug with my good arm, the other holding an ice pack to my face. My mother appeared from the kitchen, her face composed once more. "Ryan, go to bed. Marissa needs to rest." As he reluctantly headed upstairs, she turned to me. "I have made some broth for you, and I picked up nutritional supplements from the all-night pharmacy." There was no acknowledgement of what had happened, no apology, no comfort beyond the practical matters of keeping me fed. I took the mug of broth she offered and retreated to my room, careful not to let the hot tears spill until I was alone. The next days passed in a blur of pain and adjustment. Learning to drink through a straw when your jaw is immobilized. Figuring out how to clean your teeth around metal wires. Sleeping propped up to minimize swelling. The constant throbbing ache that even prescription painkillers could not fully touch. I missed a week of school. My father told the administration I had been in a car accident. When I returned, I carried a small whiteboard to communicate with teachers, though I used it as little as possible. The fewer questions I had to answer, the better. Rumors spread quickly. I heard whispers as I passed in the hallway. I heard she was drunk driving. No, she was with her college boyfriend and they crashed. My mom works at the hospital. She said it looked like someone hit her. That last one from a girl I barely knew in my calculus class made me freeze momentarily. Someone suspected. Someone had seen through the lie. But what good did that do me now, with my jaw wired shut and no way to tell my story, even if I wanted to? Allison was the only one who directly confronted me. She cornered me in the girls' bathroom during lunch period, her face a mask of concern. "Marissa, what really happened? And do not give me that car accident garbage. I have known you since we were 7. You would have texted me immediately if you had been in an accident." I stared at her, wishing I could unload the truth, share the burden. Instead, I wrote on my whiteboard, "Not now. Cannot talk about it." She looked hurt but nodded slowly. "When you can talk, I am here. Always." At home, a strange new dynamic emerged. My father seemed almost pleased with my condition, with my enforced silence. He became more talkative at dinner, filling the void where my voice would have been with his opinions on everything from politics to the neighbors' landscaping choices. "It is peaceful without your constant backtalk, is it not, Eleanor?" he would say, and my mother would nod, avoiding my eyes. Ryan became my shadow whenever possible, bringing me books, helping me with tasks that required two hands, slipping me notes with jokes or drawings to make me smile despite the wires. One night he crept into my room after our parents had gone to bed. "I cannot stop thinking about it," he whispered. "About what Dad did. About what Mom said." I took out my journal and wrote, "Not your fault. Never your fault." But if I had not spilled the gravy. I shook my head emphatically and wrote again. He would have found another reason. Always does. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "What are we going to do, Marissa?" I hesitated, then wrote slowly. "I have a plan, but you need to trust me and be patient." And I did have the beginnings of a plan formed during long, silent hours of recovery. I would turn 18 in less than 3 months. Legally an adult, I could leave without being dragged back. But Ryan could not, and I would not leave without him. I needed evidence. I needed resources. I needed allies. The wires in my jaw had silenced me temporarily, but they had also given me time to think, to plan, to calculate each step with care. That night I started recording. Using my phone hidden under my pillow, I captured my father's tirade about a neighbor who had complained about his truck blocking their driveway. It was not physical abuse, but his threatening language and explosive anger were clear. It was a start. As I drifted to sleep, pain medication dulling but not eliminating the constant ache in my jaw, I thought about the doctor's words 6 to 8 weeks, my prison sentence, but also my preparation time. When these wires came off, I would be ready. They thought they had silenced me. They had no idea they had only made my voice stronger. 3 weeks after my jaw was broken, I returned to full days at school. The swelling had subsided enough that the bruising could be mostly covered with makeup, though nothing could disguise the wires or my inability to speak normally. I communicated through notes, nods, and my increasingly worn whiteboard. The hallways of Millfield High had become a gauntlet of stares and whispers. Friends who had once included me in every conversation now spoke around me, uncomfortable with my new mode of communication. Teachers were patient, but clearly uncertain how to call on me in class discussions. Only Miss Jenkins treated me the same as before, pushing me academically and finding ways to include me despite my limitations. After class one day, she asked me to stay behind. "Marissa," she said, once the room had emptied, "I do not want to overstep, but I need to ask you something." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The story about you falling down the stairs. Is that what really happened?" My heart rate accelerated. This was the opening I had been waiting for, but fear still gripped me. What if confiding in her made things worse? What if my father found out? What if Ryan paid the price for my honesty? I stood frozen, whiteboard clutched to my chest as Miss Jenkins waited patiently. Finally, I uncapped my marker and wrote 3 words: "I need help." She did not gasp or overreact, for which I was grateful. She simply nodded and said, "I thought so. Let us talk about what kind of help you need." That afternoon marked a turning point. Miss Jenkins became my first ally in what would become an escape plan rather than just a vague hope of getting away. She provided resources pamphlets on domestic violence that I hid in my school locker, contact information for support organizations, information about emergency scholarships for students in crisis situations. Most importantly, she believed me without question and offered her classroom as a safe space during lunch and after school, where I could work on college applications, research resources, and simply exist without fear for a few hours each day. Meanwhile, I continued my evidence gathering at home. My phone became my most important tool, hidden in pockets or beneath books, recording my father's verbal tirades. I was careful, strategic, waiting for moments when he was most likely to expose his true nature, without suspecting he was being documented. I also began keeping a detailed journal stored in my school locker rather than at home, chronicling events with dates, times, and specific details. Past incidents I had tried to forget, I now forced myself to remember and record. The time he had thrown a plate at the wall beside my head when I was 12. The night he had dragged Ryan from bed by his arm, leaving fingerprint bruises because he had forgotten to take out the trash. The countless threats, the constant belittling, the controlled isolation from friends and family. The more I wrote, the more I recognized the systematic nature of the abuse. This was not just a father with a temper. This was calculated control and intimidation. Naming it helped somehow made me feel less crazy for the fear and anger I had carried for so long. My research expanded beyond escape to understanding domestic violence law in Pennsylvania. I learned about protection from abuse orders, about child protective services, about what evidence would be most compelling to authorities. During library periods, I used the school computers to research rather than my phone, which could be checked by my father. At Miss Jenkins' suggestion, I applied for emergency scholarships available to students facing domestic violence or homelessness. These were different from the merit-based scholarships I had already secured, offering additional support for housing and basic needs that standard financial aid might not cover. Most crucially, I needed to find a safe place for Ryan and me to go when the time came. The local women's shelter would not take a teenage boy over 12, and I refused to be separated from my brother. After much deliberation, I reached out to my Aunt Linda in California. She was my mother's sister who had distanced herself from the family years ago after a massive fight with my father. I had vague memories of her from early childhood, a woman with my mother's eyes but a louder laugh, bringing me picture books and letting me try on her colorful scarves. Using a new email account created at school, I sent her a carefully worded message, not revealing everything but indicating that Ryan and I needed help getting away from our father. Days passed with no response, and I began to lose hope. Then, during a library period in my 4th week of recovery, I checked the account to find her reply. "Marissa, I have been waiting for this message for years. Call me when you can. Here is my number. I will help however you need. Linda." With shaking hands, I copied down her phone number, deleting the email afterward. That weekend, while my parents were at a neighborhood association meeting, I used our landline to call her, Ryan keeping watch at the window. "Aunt Linda," I said, my voice still strange and limited with the wires. "Marissa. Oh my God, what is wrong with your voice?" Jaw wired shut. Dad broke it. "Need to get out. Ryan too." The line went silent for a moment. Then, "Tell me everything." In halting, painful sentences, I explained what had happened and what I needed. A place to stay until I started college. Help getting Ryan enrolled in school in California. Support navigating the legal system if we decided to pursue charges. "You will both come here," she said without hesitation. "I have a spare bedroom. You can share it until we figure something more permanent out. When do you turn 18? "June 15th. "Then we aim for June 16th. Are you gathering evidence like I suggested?" "Yes. Recordings, journal, photos of old injuries." "Good girl. Keep doing that. And Marissa, I am so sorry I did not try harder to stay in touch. I should have known." "Not your fault," I managed the pain in my jaw flaring as I spoke. With Aunt Linda's support secured, I began planning the logistics of our escape. Transportation was the first challenge. We would need to fly to California, which meant money for tickets getting to the airport and navigating security as a minor traveling with his sister. I took on small online jobs, transcription and data entry. I could do silently during late nights, earning money that went into a PayPal account my father knew nothing about. Miss PayPal Pernudad Jenkins helped me apply for a credit card in my own name that would be activated when I turned 18, giving me a financial tool independent of my parents. I made copies of our birth certificates and social security cards, sneaking them from my father's filing cabinet during a rare afternoon when both parents were out. I researched what Ryan would need to transfer schools, downloading forms that would require my mother's signature, planning how I might convince her, or failing that, how I might forge it. 6 weeks after my jaw was broken, I hit a snag in my planning. I had left a tab open on my laptop researching domestic violence shelters. My mother, cleaning my room while I was at school, must have seen it. When I returned home, she was waiting in my room, sitting on my bed with an unreadable expression. "Why are you looking up shelters?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. I froze in the doorway, mind racing. I could not lie effectively with my jaw still wired, and the evidence was clear on the screen she had left open deliberately. She stood approaching me slowly, like I was a skittish animal. "Marissa, whatever you are thinking of doing, think carefully. Your father provides for this family. He keeps a roof over our heads, food on the table. Yes, he has a temper, but all men do. We have to manage it, not run from it." I stared at her, shocked by her ability to reduce what had happened to a mere temper. I took out my whiteboard and wrote, "He broke my jaw, Mom." She flinched but quickly composed herself. You provoked him. You know how he gets when he is challenged. If you would just follow the rules, these things would not happen. It was the closest she had come to acknowledging the abuse, but still wrapped in justification and victim blaming. I wrote again. This is not normal, not healthy, for any of us. For a brief moment, something flickered in her eyes, a recognition that I thought might lead to a breakthrough. But just as quickly it was gone, replaced by the practiced blankness I knew so well. Just be careful with this research, she said, gesturing to the laptop. Your father checks the browsing history sometimes. With that, she left, closing the door softly behind her. She had not told my father about what she found. It was not support exactly, but it was not opposition either. It was the closest thing to help she could offer in her own trapped situation. The following week, Dr. Matthews removed the wires from my jaw. The relief was immediate and overwhelming, though he warned me to take it easy to stick with soft foods for another week to avoid excessive talking or yawning that might strain the newly healed bone. The break has healed remarkably well, he said, examining the x-rays. You are young, which helps. There may be some residual pain or clicking for a while, but with time you should regain full function. I tested my jaw carefully, opening and closing it, feeling the stiffness but reveling in the freedom of movement. Thank you, Dr. Matthews, I said, my voice raspy from disuse. You are welcome, Marissa. Take care of yourself. He hesitated, then added quietly. And if you ever need to talk about anything else, my door is always open. Our eyes met, and I knew he suspected the truth. But like the emergency room nurse, like so many others who had glimpsed our family's reality over the years, he would not push if I did not open that door. At home, my father greeted my restored speech with a warning. I hope these past weeks have taught you something, Marissa, about respecting your father, about keeping certain thoughts to yourself. I looked at him directly, this man who had terrorized our family for as long as I could remember, and felt something new, not just fear, but clarity. I saw him clearly now, not as the all-powerful figure of my childhood, but as a weak man who could only feel strong by making others feel small. I have learned a lot, I said carefully, my jaw still stiff. Thank you for the lesson, Dad. He seemed satisfied with what he took as submission, nodding approvingly at my apparent compliance. If only he knew what I had really learned: how to plan, how to gather evidence, how to create an escape route not just for myself, but for Ryan too. Above all, how to wait for the perfect moment to act. 2 weeks left until my 18th birthday. 2 weeks until we would be free. June 13th, 2 days before my 18th birthday. The countdown that had sustained me through weeks of pain and careful planning was nearly complete. My bags were packed, hidden under my bed, containing only essentials and treasured possessions that could fit in a single duffel. Ryan had a similar bag prepared, though he did not know exactly when we would leave. I had not told him the specific date, worried his anticipation might give us away. Our tickets to California were purchased departing on the evening of June 16th from Philadelphia International Airport. Miss Jenkins had offered to drive us. My new credit card had arrived and was activated, hidden in a tampon box my father would never touch. The evidence was securely backed up in 3 places: a cloud drive, a USB stick in my school locker, and copies with Miss Jenkins. Everything was in place. I just needed to make it through these final days without raising suspicion. But life rarely follows even the most careful plans. That evening, I returned from my final day of senior classes to find the house unusually quiet. My mother's car was in the driveway, but she was not in the kitchen preparing dinner as usual. My father's truck was gone, which was not unexpected as he often worked late. Mom, I called, setting my backpack by the door. Ryan. No response. Uneasiness prickled at the back of my neck as I moved through the silent house. In the living room, I found my mother sitting motionless on the couch, staring at nothing, her hands folded in her lap. Mom, what is wrong? Where is Ryan? She turned to me slowly, her face unnaturally calm. Your father picked him up from school. They went fishing. My father never took Ryan fishing. He considered it a waste of time, had dismissed Ryan's interest in the activity for years. Why today is a school night? Your father said it was time for some man-to-man bonding. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. Mom, you are scaring me. What is going on? She stood abruptly smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. Nothing is going on, Marissa. Your father simply wanted to spend time with his son. Is that so strange? It was strange. It was unprecedented. And it terrified me. When will they be back? For dinner. Around 7. She glanced at the clock. You should start your homework. I need to prepare the fish your father will bring home. She moved to the kitchen like a sleepwalker, leaving me standing alone, fighting rising panic. Something was very wrong. I went to my room and immediately checked my hiding places. My duffel bag was untouched under the bed. The tampon box with my credit card seemed undisturbed. But when I reached for my phone to check that my evidence recordings were intact, my blood ran cold. It was not my phone. It looked like mine, same case, same lock screen image, but when I entered my passcode, it did not unlock. This was a decoy, a similar model meant to fool me at first glance. My father had my real phone, with all the recordings, all the evidence, all the text messages with Miss Jenkins and Aunt Linda. I sat on my bed, mind racing. How much had he discovered? How long had I been carrying this fake phone? What would he do when he returned? And most urgently, where was Ryan really? I forced myself to breathe, to think logically through my panic. If my father knew everything, he would have confronted me immediately, not crafted this elaborate scenario. He must have suspicions, but perhaps not the full picture. The fishing trip might be genuine, a way to keep Ryan occupied while he dealt with me. Or it might be something worse. I needed to find my brother. Now. Grabbing my car keys, I headed for the front door, only to find my mother blocking the way. Where are you going? She asked, knife still in hand from the vegetables she had been chopping. I forgot something at school, a textbook I need for homework. The lie came easily born of years of practice. No, she shook her head firmly. Your father said you should stay home until he returns. Mom, please. I need to find Ryan. They are just fishing, Marissa. At Copper Creek, like always. Copper Creek was a small stream about 20 minutes outside of town where my father had occasionally taken me fishing when I was very young, before I had disappointed him too many times. If they were really there, I could be there in 25 minutes. Mom, I need to go. Either help me or get out of my way. Something flickered in her eyes, a moment of clarity breaking through the fog of compliance. He found your phone this morning. He was looking for something else in your room and found it under your mattress. He has been listening to recordings all day. My stomach dropped. What did he say? He said you had betrayed the family, that you were planning something, that he needed to talk sense into Ryan before you poisoned him completely. Talk sense into Ryan, my father's euphemism for breaking his spirit. I need to go. Now. I moved toward the door again, and this time she stepped aside. Marissa, she called as I reached for the handle. Be careful. He was. I have not seen him this angry before. I nodded grimly and ran to my car, an ancient Honda Civic that had been a gift for my 17th birthday, though the strings attached were numerous. It started on the second try, and I peeled out of the driveway, heading for Copper Creek with my heart in my throat. The drive was a blur of fear and determination. What would I find? What would I do when I got there? I had no plan beyond making sure Ryan was safe. At Copper Creek, there were only 2 other cars in the small dirt parking area. Neither was my father's truck. I got out anyway, running down to the fishing spots, calling Ryan's name. Nothing. Back in my car, I tried to think. Where else might they be? Home was 25 minutes behind me. I needed to be smart, strategic. Then it hit me. The cabin. My father's hunting buddy Jack owned a small cabin about 40 minutes north of town. Dad had taken me there once or twice when I was young, though I had not been invited in years. It was isolated, private, perfect for talking sense into someone without witnesses. I turned north, pushing my old car as fast as it would go, praying I was wrong, but knowing in my gut I was right. The cabin sat at the end of a rutted dirt road nestled among pine trees. As I approached, I spotted my father's truck parked haphazardly by the front door. Relief that I had found them mingled with fresh fear about what might be happening inside. I parked behind his truck, blocking it in case he tried to leave, and approached the cabin quietly. Through a dirty window, I could see them. Ryan sat at a small table, his face tear-streaked but defiant. My father paced in front of him, gesturing angrily. I could not hear what was being said, but when my father suddenly slammed his hand on the table inches from Ryan's face, my decision was made. I pulled out my phone, the fake one, and started recording video anyway. It would not save anywhere, but my father did not know that. Then I pushed open the door. Both heads snapped toward me. Ryan's eyes widened in relief and fear. My father's narrowed dangerously. "What are you doing here, Marissa?" he demanded. "How did you find us?" I held up my phone, making sure he could see it was recording. I have been tracking Ryan's phone, and now I am recording everything. Step away from my brother. "Turn that off right now," he growled, moving toward me. "I would not do that, Dad. This is streaming live. And I have sent our location to several people. Anything happens to us, they will know exactly who is responsible." It was a bluff, but a convincing one. He hesitated, calculating. "You think you are so smart," he spat. "I found your little recordings. Your plans to run away, to take your brother, to destroy this family." "This is not a family," I said steadily. "This is a prison. And yes, I am taking Ryan away from here. Away from you. I am your father. You are 17 years old. You have no right. I will be 18 in 2 days, and I have evidence of years of abuse. Broken bones, bruises, threats. Do you want to see what a judge would say about my rights then?" He lunged forward, suddenly grabbing for my phone. I stepped back, but not quickly enough. His fingers closed around my wrist, squeezing until I gasped in pain. "Give me the phone, Marissa." No. I held firm, though. My wrist felt like it might snap. "Ryan, get behind me." My brother slipped from his chair and moved toward me, but my father caught him with his other hand. "Nobody is going anywhere. We are going to fix this family whether you like it or not." "Let him go," I shouted, struggling against his grip. "Let him go, or I swear I will make sure you spend the next 10 years in prison." From outside came the sound of tires on gravel. My father froze his grip, loosening slightly. I wrenched my arm free and pushed Ryan behind me, backing toward the door. "That will be the police," I lied. "I called them before I came in." My mother appeared in the doorway, breathless and pale. "Thomas, stop this, please." He stared at her in disbelief. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" I followed Marissa. "This has to stop. Look at what you are doing to your children. Look at what you have become." For a moment, no one moved. Then my father seemed to collapse in on himself, sinking into a chair, his face in his hands. "You have all betrayed me," he muttered. "My own family." "No, Dad," I said quietly. "You betrayed us. Every time you chose violence over love. Every time you taught us to fear you instead of respect you." My mother moved to stand beside us, forming a united front. "Thomas, you need help. Professional help. This cannot continue." He looked up, his eyes red but dry. "So what now, you? Take my son away. You destroy everything I have built." "You have 2 choices," I said firmly. "Either you get professional help, anger management therapy, whatever it takes to become the father we deserve, or Ryan and I leave with all the evidence going straight to the police." "You would not dare. Try me." I held his gaze steadily. "I have lived in fear of you for 17 years. That ends today one way or another." The silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. Finally, he looked away. "Get out," he said quietly. "All of you, get out of my sight." My mother touched my shoulder. "Let us go. Now while we can." We backed out of the cabin slowly, never turning our backs until we reached our cars. My mother had followed in her sedan, parking behind my Civic. "Take Ryan with you," I told her. "Follow me. We are not going home." Instead, we drove to Aunt Linda's hotel. She had flown in the day before preparation for helping us leave, and was waiting anxiously in her room when we arrived. The reunion was tearful, my mother collapsing into her sister's arms with sobs that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. "I should have left years ago," she cried. "I should have protected them." "You are here now," Aunt Linda said softly. "That is what matters." That night, we made new plans. My mother would stay with friends while filing for divorce and a protection order. Ryan and I would still go to California as planned, but now with our mother's legal permission rather than running away. The evidence I had gathered would be used if necessary, but held in reserve, hoping my father would choose help over prosecution. 2 days later, on my 18th birthday, I received a text from my father. I have started counseling. I am sorry. Not asking for forgiveness. Just telling you. It was more acknowledgement than I had expected, though far from the change we needed to see. Still, it was a start. A week later, Ryan and I boarded our flight to California, our mother and Miss Jenkins seeing us off at the airport. The future was uncertain but full of possibilities that had seemed impossible just months before. As the plane lifted off, Ryan squeezed my hand. "We are really free, are not we?" he asked. I nodded, looking out at the shrinking landscape below. "Yes," I said, my once broken jaw now speaking words of freedom. "We really are. 1 year can change everything." Sitting on the beach near Aunt Linda's San Diego apartment, watching Ryan splash in the Pacific Ocean, I barely recognized our lives. The terrified teenagers who had arrived in California 12 months ago had been transformed not into completely different people, but into stronger, healing versions of ourselves. Aunt Linda's 2-bedroom apartment became our sanctuary. She had converted her home office into a bedroom, with twin beds for Ryan and me, painting the walls a peaceful blue, at our request the opposite of the beige that had dominated our childhood home. The first night in those beds, we had both woken with nightmares, the lingering effect of trauma that would not disappear overnight. But each night grew easier, the space between bad dreams lengthening until they became rare rather than expected. The initial weeks had been the hardest. I struggled with hypervigilance, startling at loud noises, constantly checking door locks, sleeping with one eye open. Ryan had developed selective mutism, speaking normally to me and Aunt Linda, but falling silent around strangers or in stressful situations. We were broken in different ways, our coping mechanisms as individual as our experiences. But Aunt Linda never wavered. A social worker by profession, she understood trauma in ways our mother never had and guided us toward professional help with gentle persistence. "Healing is not linear," she told us often. "Some days will feel like steps backward. That is okay. Just keep moving." I enrolled in City College of San Diego, accepting the scholarship I had been offered but deferring enrollment to the prestigious psychology program I had originally planned to attend. I needed space to breathe and stabilize before taking on too much academically. The college counselor had been understanding, helping me create a reduced course load that would keep me on track without overwhelming my still fragile emotional state. Ryan started 8th grade at the local middle school, where his Pennsylvania accent made him an object of curiosity among California kids. The novelty provided a convenient explanation for his occasional silence, and a kind teacher recognized the signs of trauma, creating a safe space for him to adjust at his own pace. Slowly, he made friends, join the science club, began talking about marine biology with growing animation. Meanwhile, the legal aftermath of our departure unfolded back in Pennsylvania. True to her word, our mother had filed for divorce and obtained a temporary protection order. My father, facing the reality of losing his entire family and potential criminal charges, had enrolled in an intensive anger management program and begun seeing a therapist specializing in abusive behavior. The cynical part of me doubted his sincerity, viewing it as manipulation to avoid consequences. But reports from my mother suggested genuine, if imperfect, efforts at change. He had moved out of the family home into an apartment, maintaining his construction job, but surrendering most financial decisions to a court-appointed overseer until the divorce was finalized. Most surprisingly, he had not contested any of the divorce terms, agreeing to my mother's requests without the battle we had all expected. 3 months into our California life, I received a letter from him. For days I carried it unopened, alternating between wanting to burn it and needing to know what it said. When I finally read it, sitting on the beach with Aunt Linda nearby for support, I found neither the rage I feared nor the manipulation I expected, but something more complex. "Marissa," he had written in his precise handwriting, "I cannot ask for forgiveness because what I did was unforgivable. Breaking your jaw was the worst thing I have ever done, but it was not the only wrong I committed against you and Ryan. For years, I terrorized my own children, convinced my control was protection, my anger was strength. My therapist says I need to take full responsibility without excuses, so I am trying to do that. I am sorry. Not because I got caught or because you left, but because I hurt you both so deeply. I am working to understand why I became the man I did and how to become something better. You do not owe me another chance. You do not owe me a response to this letter. You do not owe me anything. I just wanted you to know I am trying, Dad. I had cried then, not from residual fear or anger, but from something more complicated, a grief for the father he could have been, for the childhood we should have had. Aunt Linda had held me through it, understanding without words the complexity of loving someone who had hurt you so profoundly. I did not respond to his letter immediately. Instead, I brought it to my therapist, Dr. Sharma, a kind Indian woman who had specialized in family trauma for 20 years. "What do you want to do?" she asked, after I had shared the letter and my confused feelings about it. "I do not know. Part of me wants to believe he can change. Another part says that is naive and dangerous." "Both parts can be right," she said. "People can change with dedicated effort and proper support. And it is also wise to be cautious to protect yourself from further harm." Eventually, I sent a brief response. "Thank you for your letter. I am glad you are getting help. Ryan and I are safe and doing well in California. I need time and space, but I appreciate your acknowledgement of the harm you caused." It was neither forgiveness nor rejection, but an acknowledgement of his effort and a reinforcement of my boundaries. It was all I could offer then. Meanwhile, I found unexpected healing through helping others. At Dr. Sharma's suggestion, I joined a support group for young adults who had experienced family violence. Hearing others' stories helped normalize my own experiences, removing some of the shame and isolation that had clung to me. More surprisingly, sharing my story seemed to help others, particularly a 16-year-old girl named Jenna, who reminded me painfully of myself a year earlier. "How did you find the courage to leave?" she asked me. After one session, her eyes downcast, voice barely audible. "One day at a time," I told her. "First, by admitting what was happening was wrong. Then, by finding just one person I could trust. Then, another. Building a safety net thread by thread until it was strong enough to catch me." These conversations led me to volunteer at a youth crisis center, answering phones and connecting teens in trouble with resources. The work gave purpose to my pain, turning my worst experiences into a bridge toward others' healing. By the 6-month mark, Ryan had begun flourishing in ways that sometimes took my breath away. His California friends had introduced him to surfing, and though initially terrified of the ocean, he had pushed through his fear with characteristic determination. Watching him ride his first wave, face transformed by pure joy, I had felt something long dormant bloom in my chest. Hope not just for survival, but for genuine happiness. "Did you see me, Marissa?" he had shouted, running up the beach, surfboard under his arm. I stayed up for like 10 seconds. "I saw you," I had called back, throat tight with emotion. "You were amazing." These moments of uncomplicated joy became more frequent as the months passed. Ryan bringing home an A on his science project. Aunt Linda teaching us to make her famous tamales, the kitchen filled with laughter and flour-dusted handprints. My first college paper earning praise from a professor who knew nothing of my history, validating me purely on my academic merits. 8 months after our escape, our mother came to visit. She arrived at the airport looking both familiar and changed her haircut into a stylish bob instead of the conservative style my father had preferred, wearing jeans and a colorful blouse rather than her usual muted dresses. The reunion was emotional, but not without tension. I had forgiven her more easily than I had expected, understanding now, as an adult, how trapped she had felt, how fear had paralyzed her ability to protect us. Ryan struggled more with her presence, polite but reserved, not yet ready to bridge the gap her silence had created. "I am so proud of you both," she said over dinner at Aunt Linda's. "So proud of how resilient you have been." "We had help," I said, squeezing Aunt Linda's hand across the table. "We were not alone." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I should have been that help. I should have protected you." "You were trapped too, Mom," I said softly. "In a different way, but still trapped." She nodded, dabbing at her eyes. "I am in therapy too now, learning why I stayed, why I enabled his behavior. It is not easy facing my own complicity." "Are you going back to him?" Ryan asked suddenly, his first direct question to her all evening. She shook her head firmly. "No, Ryan, never. The divorce will be final next month. I have a job at the library now, and I am taking classes at the community college. I am building a life without him." Only then did some of the tension leave Ryan's shoulders, some of the wariness fade from his eyes. It would take time to rebuild trust, but this was a start. Our mother stayed for a week, the four of us finding a new rhythm together, creating memories untainted by fear. Before she left, she gave us each a key. "I have bought a small house near Aunt Linda," she explained. "It has a room for each of you for visits or holidays or whenever you are ready. No pressure, no expectations. Just a door that will always be open." The gesture meant more than any words could have, a concrete symbol of her commitment to our healing and autonomy. As the one-year mark approached, I found myself reflecting often on how far we had come. My jaw had healed completely, though occasionally it still clicked when I yawned, too widely a physical reminder I suspected would never entirely fade. The psychological scars were similar, mostly healed, but with occasional twinges when triggered by a raised voice or unexpected movement. I had made friends at college cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. I had even begun dating a sweet music major named David, who understood my need for space and never questioned why certain topics made me uncomfortable. The first time he had raised his hand quickly near my face to brush away a bee, I had flinched so violently I nearly fell off the park bench. Instead of being offended, he had simply nodded and said, "Someone hurt you before. I am sorry. I will be more careful with my movements around you." His simple acknowledgement without demanding details had allowed me to share my story when I was ready on my own terms. His response, a quiet, "Thank you for trusting me with that," had healed something small but significant within me. Ryan, too, had begun building new relationships, though he remained more cautious than before. His science teacher, Mr. Abernathy, had become a mentor, recognizing his potential and encouraging his newfound interest in marine ecology. For Ryan's 13th birthday, Mr. Abernathy had arranged a behind-the-scenes tour of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, solidifying Ryan's dream of becoming a marine biologist. "I want to study things that can survive extreme conditions," he explained to me afterward, "like organisms that live at crushing ocean depths or in boiling hot springs. Things that seem fragile but are actually incredibly strong." I had hugged him tightly, recognizing the metaphor whether he intended it or not. We were those organisms surviving what should have broken us, permanently adapting and thriving in new environments. On the anniversary of our arrival in California, Aunt Linda threw us a small celebration she called our Freedom Day. Just the three of us, plus David and two of Ryan's friends from school, gathered on the beach for a bonfire and barbecue. As the sun set over the Pacific, casting the water in shades of gold and crimson, Ryan leaned against my side, unusually reflective for a 13-year-old boy. "Do you ever miss home?" he asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. I miss the idea of what home should have been, but no, I do not miss what it actually was. He nodded thoughtfully. I was so scared that night at the cabin, but also relieved in a weird way, because finally everything was out in the open. "I know exactly what you mean." "Do you think he has really changed?" Ryan asked, voicing the question that still haunted us both. "I think he is trying," I said honestly, "and that is more than he ever did before. But change that deep, it takes years, not months, and some damage cannot be undone." Ryan was quiet for a long moment, watching the flames dance in the fire pit. "I am not ready to see him again. Maybe not ever." "That is completely okay," I assured him. "You do not owe him forgiveness or another chance. Your only responsibility is to heal and build your own life." "What about you? Will you see him again someday?" I gazed out at the darkening ocean, considering. Maybe. From a safe distance, with clear boundaries. Not to rebuild what was, but to find closure for myself. But I am not ready yet either. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as the others joined us, Aunt Linda distributing skewers for marshmallows, Ryan's friends arguing good-naturedly about the proper technique for the perfect s'mores. Later, as the party wound down and the fire burned to embers, I slipped away to stand at the water's edge, letting the cool waves wash over my bare feet, anchoring me in the present moment. I thought about the girl I had been a year ago, jaw-wired, shut spirit, nearly broken. The girl who had found her voice not despite being silenced, but because of it. Who had discovered that sometimes family is who you choose, not who shares your DNA. Who had learned that healing is not the absence of scars, but the strength to carry them without shame. The broken bone in my jaw had indeed healed stronger at the fracture point, just as the broken places in my life had become the foundation for something more resilient. The medical term was callus formation, my doctor had explained once, where bone cells rebuild around the break site, often creating a stronger structure than existed before the injury. People could heal the same way I had discovered, not erasing the breaks, but incorporating them, building something new around the damaged places. Behind me, I heard Ryan laugh at something David had said, the sound unrestrained and genuine. Aunt Linda called my name, waving me back to the circle of light and warmth they had created. I took one last look at the vast ocean, stretching into darkness, thinking of all the others out there still trapped in cycles of abuse and fear. If my story could help even one person find their way to freedom, then perhaps all the pain had some purpose after all. "I am coming," I called back to my chosen family, turning away from the darkness toward the light. Some things break beyond repair, but some breaks become the very places where the light gets in, where growth becomes possible, where strength is forged in the crucible of pain. My father had broken my jaw thinking he could silence me. Instead, he had given me my voice, my purpose, and ultimately my freedom. As I rejoined the circle around the fire, I realized the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the most profound healing comes not from forgetting the past, but from transforming it into wisdom that lights the way forward. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after escaping a difficult situation? What helped you find strength during that process? Share your story in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Your journey matters and your voice deserves to be heard. Thank you for listening to my story, and may your own path lead you to healing and peace.